In the small fishing town Volendam, the Netherlands, a young boy named Martin Koch was born into a humble family. Little did anyone know that this unassuming child would grow up to become one of the most notorious and feared criminals the country had ever seen. From selling eels on the streets of Amsterdam to dealing cocaine and rubbing shoulders with the Dutch underworld's biggest names, Martin's path was one of escalating violence and depravity. He lived a life of money, fame, and infamy, taunting rivals and authorities alike. But Martin's bold attitude and hunger for power would ultimately lead to his brutal demise. This is the shocking true story of how a small-town delinquent transformed into a crime celebrity. Before we continue, I got a small request. We noticed that a lot of our viewers are not subscribed yet. In order to grow our channel, we would really appreciate if you could subscribe to our channel and leave a like and comment. That would really help us a lot. Thanks. Martin Koch was born on June 25, 1967. He was the second child of Grietje Kess and Bruin Koch Jr. The Koch family lived in a terraced house in the Monnikenveld neighborhood of Volendam. Martin mentioned that it was a very simple house. I slept in the room with my brother Ruud because we had a sink in our room. It was rented out to Germans in the summer. Then I slept in the attic, along with my brothers Ruud and Ben and my parents. That's why, like many other Volendammers, we had a sign in the window saying, Zimmer Frey. At the age of 6, Martin started attending the J.F. Kennedy School. Every day he walked to school with his brothers. The school building at that time had a kind of H shape. One part housed the lower grades, while the other housed the upper grades. The two parts were connected by a cafeteria. Martin's favorite subjects in elementary school were geography and history. According to him, he was also very good at math, but was really bad at language. He always got a 0 for spelling. Even when he thought he had done really well, he'd get one. After elementary school, Martin attended the Zuiderzee School, a lower technical school in Edam, where he chose the painting direction. Martin stated that everyone came to school by bike, including a large number of teachers, including Mr. Wessels. He taught math and had a black belt in judo. I looked up to him. I had a blue belt myself. But Martin hated cycling, especially the distance between Volendam and Edam. I always hitchhiked to school. That meant I was late regularly. Even if I was sent out of class in the 4th hour, for example, I hitchhiked home. Of course, I didn't go back to Edam. I always left my school bag at school. I never did my homework. He was often late and frequently sent out of class, like the time he jokingly electrocuted a fellow student in the electrical class. When Martin turned 15, he didn't have to attend school anymore. The mayor of Volendam helped avoid his truancy. Martin's parents had to sign a note agreeing never to discuss it. In 1982, Martin worked in the fish industry. He had obtained his fish processing diploma at night school. Every day, he drove to the Indische Buurt in Amsterdam-Oost with his bosses, Dick and Jack Molenaar, in an old yellow Mercedes. The Molenaar men were thrifty types. Martin easily recalled their motto, "Thrifty with diligence builds houses like castles." The Molenaars had 2 fish shops in Oost, both called De Volendammer. One was in Molekenstraat, the other in Javastraat. The Indische Buurt was a poor neighborhood at that time. People there didn't have much to spend, so it wasn't really smart to have 2 shops there. Sometimes Martin worked in the shop in Javastraat, other times in Molekenstraat. He always wore clogs because the floor was nearly always wet, along with an apron. He did everything from filleting to selling to hauling fish. He learned to handle knives well, which would come in handy later in his life. When he came home in the evenings, he smelled like fish. Martin earned 150 guilders per week. He thought it was way too little. He wanted to earn a lot and spend a lot, just like Jack Strook from Volendam. Jack spent days apparently doing nothing in cafes like the Passage Bar in Volendam, but at the same time he had loads of money and drove expensive cars. Martin admired him a lot. Officially, Strook was a shrimp trader, but most people from Volendam knew better. Jackie made his money with shady business, and at that time he had contacts with underworld figures like Frits van der Wereld, Etienne Yu, and Klaas Bruinsma. Besides working at the fish shop owned by the Molenaar brothers, Martin, together with his father and brother Ben, toured Amsterdam cafes selling eel. They did this every Friday night and Saturday, dressed in traditional Volendam attire, red shirt, black baggy pants, black hat, and clogs, and followed a fixed route. Martin's path took him through the Martelaarsgracht, a section of Nieuwendijk, then through the red light district to Rembrandtplein. He frequently extended his journey to De Piep, carrying a box under his arm, along with eel. He also carried sprat, shrimp, and red salmon. Martin quickly figured out where he could earn the most money, in the bars frequented by criminals. After visiting Van Claveren, now known as Café de Ster, Martin frequently found himself at Rembrandtplein, specifically at Café Celia, a gathering place for tough individuals, particularly Yugoslavs and Albanians. Next to Celia was Casino Golden 10, where wrestler and gym owner Bertus Kops stood at the door. Martin sold a lot of eels there while wearing his Volendam costume. His next destination was often Café Koffiehuis Metro near Waterloopline, where they encountered mostly market vendors, stolen goods, and pimps. Every hour, a junkie would enter with stolen items such as jewelry, leather jackets, car radios, VCRs, and cutlery. Martin frequently purchased stolen goods there, which he then resold in Volendam, even to police officers who were aware of their origins. They had no issue buying tracksuits, VCRs, or cutlery from him. Then there was the JR Bar, situated at the corner of Frans Halstraat and Eerste Jacob van Kampenstraat in De Piep. Martin frequented this place too. The JR Bar attracted numerous underworld patrons, including Fat Charles and Klaas Bruinsma, who wagered tens of thousands with anxious expressions. These weren't just any Amsterdam underworld figures, but significant individuals whom 15-year-old Martin greatly admired. However, the JR Bar's clientele wasn't solely composed of criminals. The upper class also frequented the establishment. Real estate dealer Jaap Kroonenberg, for instance, often visited to play cards. Thus, both the underworld and the upper world mingled in a sociable atmosphere. It was at the JR Bar that Martin discovered cocaine for the first time. Some patrons openly snorted lines there regularly. Someone at one point offered Martin a free package of coke about 10 grams. Though he didn't use it himself, he sold it in Volendam. This soon became a new source of income for Martin. At 16, he started dealing cocaine on a regular basis. He bought blocks of 15 to 30 grams from a guy in Nieuwmarkt or Kattenburg in Amsterdam for 50 guilders each and sold them for 200 guilders. At that time, Martin still lived in Volendam, at home with his parents on Monnikenveld. He kept his trade elsewhere, unknown to his parents. The coke was at home with a hippie in his 30s, who sometimes indulged, but was afraid enough of Martin not to snort everything. His scales, mirror, and blades were also there. After a year and a half, Martin quit the fish shop of the Molenaar brothers in Amsterdam-Oost. In addition to his eel trade on Friday evenings in the criminal cafes of Amsterdam, he stood at the door of the Movies, a popular nightclub in Volendam, on Saturday and Sunday evenings. He received no salary but got the proceeds from the cloakroom, 400 to 500 guilders per evening. On Friday evenings, back from his eel trip in Amsterdam, he also walked around the cafes in Volendam selling coke. Initially, it was 10 to 20 packets per week. Later, he sold up to 40. Over time, Martin became increasingly known in Volendam as a coke dealer. During the week, he sometimes worked in construction, and on weekends, he engaged in strange practices. Business was good, partly because Martin already practiced scarcity marketing. When it was gone, it was gone. He sold his daily supply, and that was it. Martin meticulously recorded his income from the cocaine trade in a cash book, including the names of the buyers. At the age of 22, Martin first came to the attention of the police when, on February 16, 1989, he assaulted 21-year-old Peter Giesbergen by striking him with a bar stool in a cafe in Volendam. Peter Giesbergen ultimately succumbed to his injuries in the hospital. It was revealed that Peter Giesbergen was a troublesome individual who frequently caused chaos in the Volendam nightlife scene. For this incident, Martin Koch was sentenced to a prison term of 5 years, while his accomplice, Dino Soerel, received a 4-year sentence. Martin has expressed no remorse for his actions. During his time in prison, he befriended Cor van Hout, a top Dutch criminal known primarily for the 1983 kidnapping of Freddie Heineken and his chauffeur. Martin greatly admired Cor van Hout, considering him a role model. Upon his release, Martin became involved in Cor van Hout's criminal network, often frequenting a clubhouse in Wiethuizen, where Cor dealt in hashish. Martin provided various services, including arranging prostitutes and carrying out criminal debt collections. In the late 90s, Martin began a relationship with the mother of his children, Sandra. However, their relationship soured, leading to disputes over their children's custody. On July 24, 2001, Martin, armed with a loaded pistol, confronted Sandra and her new partner in Zwaag. Enraged by his restricted access to his children and convinced that Sandra was deliberately keeping them from him, Martin entered their home and fatally shot Sandra's partner multiple times. Subsequently, Martin was sentenced to 14 years in prison. During his incarceration, he capitalized on his criminal connections to establish an escort agency named Vlinders from behind bars. Despite being considered a flight risk, he managed to obtain privileges, including access to a small office equipped with a computer and telephone. Upon his release in 2012, Martin's financial fortunes declined, prompting him to launch a crime website called vlinderscrime.nl. In 2015, the website gained notoriety for its raw and uncensored reporting on criminal activities, often revealing sensitive information about prominent underworld figures. He enjoyed his newfound fame, even taunting other criminals, and was sponsored by a company providing encrypted phones to criminals. Martin's brazen approach drew both attention and ire from the criminal underworld and law enforcement alike. Numerous attempts were made on his life, including shootings and a bomb planted under his car. Despite these threats, Martin continued to fearlessly publish incendiary content on his website. In the final months leading up to his death, Martin intensified his confrontational stance, targeting high-ranking members of the Mokro Mafia in his blog posts. However, on December 8, 2016, his life was abruptly ended when he was gunned down outside a sex club in Laren. Earlier that evening, he had already got away when someone tried to shoot him when he walked out of an hotel in Amsterdam. A guy approached him from behind and pointed a gun at him, but the gun may have jammed or the shooter lost his nerve. Martin hadn't even noticed, but this was later seen on camera footage of the hotel. However, the second attempt he couldn't evade anymore. Just after Koch got into his car in the parking lot of the sex club, he was shot dead behind the wheel with several bullets. While initial suspicion fell on Ridwan Taghi as the orchestrator of the assassination, the murder was later linked to a Scottish criminal organization via Operation Escalade. An European arrest warrant was issued for Christopher Hughes in relation to the murder, and in April 2022, Hughes was convicted and jailed for at least 25 years. Martin Koch's bloody end reminds us that those who live by violence often die by violence as well. What are your thoughts on this story? Share your opinions in the comments section, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks for watching.